These are king oyster mushrooms, and in today's video, I'm gonna teach you how to turn these mushrooms into this. The best mushroom jerky you have ever had. And not only that, this is a very easy dish to make, so you can follow along. Now here's my disclaimer at the top of the video. You do need a smoker to make this recipe what it is, and you're also going to need a dehydrator. However, in a future video, I will be showing you guys how to make mushroom jerky with just an oven. So make sure to please subscribe to my channel for that future video, but either way, still stick around so you guys can see how incredible this mushroom jerky is going to turn out. So when it comes to mushroom jerky, understand you have a lot of different ways you can do this. In fact, in some recipes, they have you turn mushrooms into a mash, and then you quite literally just form it into your desired shape for the mushroom jerky. So again, there are many different ways you can do this, but in my opinion, this is going to be the cheapest and easiest way to do this and the most delicious. So let's start with the type of mushroom we're going to be using. These are king oyster mushrooms, and these are actually a lot more common than you might realize. In fact, I actually picked these up at Kroger. You can find these in a lot of grocery stores, and if you have to, you can definitely find these in some sort of like Asian store. Now, we have to remember when it comes to mushrooms, they have a lot of moisture in them. So because of that, this entire process will basically start to shrivel and shrink your mushroom, which is why I like to use king oyster mushrooms. They are naturally already a longer and bigger mushroom, and because of that, during the smoking process and dehydration process, you're still going to have a lot of integrity with the mushroom. Now, along with the mushrooms, all we're going to need for the seasoning is garlic powder, pepper, onion powder, and some red chili flakes. And we're also going to need some ingredients for our glaze, which again is very accessible. We're going to be using mirin, we're going to be using soy sauce, and we're going to be using oyster sauce. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is actually shape our mushroom jerky the way we want it. Now, when you use king oyster mushroom, you don't want to cut it too thin or too thick. This is all you're going to do. This is the king oyster mushroom. You cut it long ways like this, and then you'll get something like this. Again, you don't want it too thin or too thick, because if you have it too thick, it's going to be way too chewy after the smoking and the dehydration process. And if you have it too thin, it's going to shrivel way too much. Okay, now the next step is actually creating the glaze. Remember, like I said at the beginning of the video, these have a lot of moisture in them. And when we smoke this and when we dehydrate it, we don't want to sit around for 5 days for all of the moisture to be drawn out. So what I like to do is create a glaze with the ingredients. And with this glaze, all we're going to do is just put a very light coat on our king oyster mushrooms. And that's really going to be enough when it comes to our flavor. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so when it comes to the glaze, we're going to be combining our seasoning and our liquids. The seasoning itself is going to be half a teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, and half a teaspoon of red pepper. But if you want some more heat, just add a little bit of more red pepper. Okay, now from here, let's add our liquids. We're gonna add 3 tablespoons of mirin. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And we're going to add 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. Okay, so again, from here, we're going to be only glazing the mushrooms. I am not a fan of soaking mushrooms in more water. We don't want to do that. The point of jerky is to draw the moisture out. Why am I adding all of the moisture in? It's just making things a little more complicated. So all we're going to do is take a brush and again, just glaze the top and the bottom of all of these mushrooms. Again, you don't want to add too much moisture. I always have to say this in every video I make with mushrooms. Mushrooms are flavor sponges. So the smoke is going to penetrate this and give it a lot of flavor to begin with, but by adding this glaze on top as well, this mushroom is going to absorb all of this flavor as well. And I've experimented a lot with this dish. One thing I realized, like I said, you don't need to add too much of this glaze. Again, we're not putting a lot of glaze on these mushrooms. I cannot stress that enough. But make sure you are glazing both sides here. Now we're going to take these mushrooms and bring it to the smoker. Okay, so from here, we want our smoker to reach a temperature of about 180 degrees. Remember, the concept now is we want to give smoke flavor and we want to cook the mushrooms. And there's really an equal balance when doing this, because while we're cooking the mushrooms, we're also trying to pull some of the moisture out of the mushrooms, which is why we are using king oyster mushrooms, because as we go through this process, the mushrooms will start to shrink. Which means these king oyster mushrooms will only be smoking for about 45 minutes to about 60 minutes. And I really have to emphasize for about. This is because you really need to be hands-on and paying attention to your mushrooms. This can all happen very fast, depending on how much moisture you have in your mushrooms, and depending on how thin or thick you cut your mushrooms as well. Okay, now the fun part, we're just putting those mushrooms right on the grill here. And again, we're talking about 45 minutes at 180 degrees to about 60 minutes, and some of you might be hitting around 70 minutes as well. I promise you, this all happens very fast, so make sure you are paying attention to these mushrooms. Okay, we are about 30 minutes in, and just to show you guys, again, this all happens very fast. Look how much this one has shriveled already. Okay, so I pulled these off at about 45 minutes, and these are officially cooked. So if you wanted to, you could eat these right now. I'll show you. And they taste amazing. But of course, we're all here to make mushroom jerky. This is a dehydrator, and now we're going to dehydrate our mushrooms for 5 hours at 135 degrees. And just like the smoking process, you are going to want to pay attention. Hours 1 to 3, you're going to be okay. But after 3 hours, make sure you're showing up and checking that texture, checking the structure of the king oyster mushroom. And I say 5 hours because that's typically around how long I will dehydrate my mushrooms for the texture I like. For some people, they might go up to 7 hours, but 5 hours should be okay. And I actually bought this from Walmart, not a sponsor, not affiliated. This was about $30. And if you're wondering, well, what texture am I looking for? Think about it in your head. If you like beef jerky, that's what you're aiming for. Now, of course, we're not using actual beef, we're using king oyster mushrooms. Try to achieve that texture as close as possible. You want to have it nice and firm, but not too firm where you're going to break your teeth. And the good thing about mushrooms, especially king oyster mushrooms, you can get pretty close to that texture you might be familiar with, especially with just your common beef jerky. But I promise you, this is going to be the best mushroom jerky you've ever had. Okay, so our dehydrator is running. I will see you guys in 5 hours. Okay, so it's been 5 hours and we officially have our mushroom jerky. And take a look how beautiful this jerky is, but I do want to show you guys, when you run it through the smoker and you dehydrate it and you also use that glaze, you actually get a very jerky type consistency and texture. So pulling it apart is rather difficult, which is a good thing. That's exactly what you want, but also you can actually hear what this sounds like. Again, it even sounds like jerky. But of course, the big question is, will it taste like jerky? Let's go ahead and try it. It is so delicious. You can taste the umami, you can taste the soy sauce, you can really taste the smoke. Again, mushrooms are so good at absorbing whatever you put on it, whether you smoke it, whether you glaze it. That's why I always refer to mushrooms as food sponges. And just to show you guys a size comparison, this one really shriveled up, and this one not so much, but they're still very good. Now look, these are not the most beautiful things you'll ever make, but as far as flavor, it's really intense and very concentrated. And again, I think this is an amazing substitute for beef jerky. And again, we're talking about an ultimate transformation from what we had before, the king oyster mushroom, to this. Also a king oyster mushroom, but check this out. when you go to rip it apart in the middle, again, you really do have that jerky-like texture where it's sort of stringy and you can pull it apart. And again, listen to it. It sounds like jerky, and it also tastes like jerky as well. Texture and flavor, especially with that smoke. And you're really chewing it. That's one thing I love about jerky. You can enjoy it, you can chew it. The texture is very important, and you're really getting it with this. Also, if you are a fan of spice, just add some more of those red pepper flakes, or maybe even add a little bit of more black pepper. You can see right there the red pepper at the top really has like infused, almost caramelized with the red pepper and everything else on top of this jerky. That's why the glaze was so important. You're also really helping out with the texture as well, and the structural integrity. One of my favorite parts about this is that it really does feel like jerky, and you can sort of, again, just pull it apart. It's stringy. So like I said before at the beginning of the video, there are many different ways to make mushroom jerky, but to me, this is the best way, and I think this also is the best flavor as far as a mushroom jerky you will ever have. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to please like and subscribe and leave your comments down below. Let me know what else you want to learn to do with mushrooms, or what experiment you want me to do with mushrooms as well. And of course, I do want to teach you guys how to make mushroom jerky with just an oven. So make sure to subscribe to my channel for that as well.